Breaking news out of Dallas, and this is massive for Cowboys Nation. George Pickens has officially signed his franchise tag with the Dallas Cowboys, and this move completely reshapes what this offense is going to look like going into the new season. This is not a rumor. This is not speculation. This is official. Pen to paper, signed, sealed, and delivered. The Cowboys and George Pickens are locked in for at least this upcoming year. And now the conversation shifts from, will they keep him, to, how far can this offense go with him truly unleashed? Now let's break down exactly what this means, how we got here, the impact on Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, the Cowboys cap situation, and what this tells us about the front office's mindset in Dallas. Stick around, because the ripple effects of this decision are huge, and they go way beyond just one wide receiver signing a tag. So first, let's talk about the basics of the franchise tag and what signing it actually means. When a team places the franchise tag on a player, it's essentially a one-year, fully guaranteed deal that keeps that player from hitting unrestricted free agency. For a wide receiver, that number is calculated based on the average of the top salaries at the position, or a percentage increase over their previous salary, whichever is higher. In other words, it's a serious chunk of change and a serious commitment from the team, even if it's only for one season. Now, before a player signs that tag, they technically don't have to show up. They can skip workouts, they can skip OTAs, and they can even hold out into training camp. But the second that paper is signed, that player is under contract for the year, and the team knows he's locked in. That's the big thing that happened today. George Pickens chose to sign, chose to commit for the season, and chose to put the ball in the Cowboys' court when it comes to his long-term future. What makes this particularly interesting with George Pickens is his personality and playing style. This is not a quiet, possession-only guy. This is a high-energy, highlight reel, physical, sometimes emotional wide receiver who brings that alpha mentality to the position. We've seen it from his college days, we've seen it in the pros, contested catches, sideline toe taps, downfield go balls, and that swagger that lets the defense know he's there. For the Cowboys to say, yes, we're tagging you, we're paying you at the top of the market for at least this year, and for Pickens to respond by signing it instead of holding out, it signals that both sides are at least on the same page for 2024. It doesn't guarantee a long-term deal, but it avoids drama, for now. And that's crucial for a team trying to contend. Now, what does this mean schematically for the Dallas Cowboys offense? Pairing George Pickens with CeeDee Lamb is absolutely terrifying for defensive coordinators. CeeDee is already one of the best route runners and most complete receivers in the game. He can line up in the slot, outside, he can motion, he can win with separation, and he can do damage after the catch. George Pickens brings that vertical, boundary, jump ball, physical presence on the outside. You cannot double everybody, and that's where it gets interesting. When you've got Pickens running deep routes, nines, posts, deep comebacks, and those back shoulder fades he loves, safeties have to respect it. They can't just roll over to CeeDee every single snap. That opens up more single coverage for Lamb, more two-way goes in the slot, and it creates spacing for tight ends and the run game underneath. Speaking of the quarterback, Dak Prescott is suddenly in one of the best situations of his career from a pure weapon standpoint. Think about the progression structure here. First read, CeeDee Lamb working a choice route or an option route over the middle. Second read, George Pickens on a deep out or a comeback on the boundary. Third read, check down or tight end leak to the flat. That's a dream scenario for a timing and rhythm passer like Dak. We've seen Dak play at an MVP level when he has legitimate weapons around him and a strong offensive system. With George Pickens officially in the fold, this offense can push the ball downfield more consistently. One of the criticisms of the Cowboys' offense in recent playoff runs has been a lack of explosive plays in big moments. Pickens is literally built to fix that problem. He's that guy you throw it up to on 3rd and 10 when the coverage is tight and just say, "Go be special." Now, from George Pickens' perspective, why sign the tag instead of holding out and pushing hard for a long-term deal right away? A few reasons. First, the tag itself pays him at or near the top of the market for the position for this year. It's a massive raise compared to his rookie deal. Second, signing the tag allows him to immediately report to the team, get fully involved in the offseason program, build chemistry with Dak, and put up a monster season in a contract year. If Pickens goes off, if he has a career season with 1-200, 1-300, maybe even 1-400 yards and double-digit touchdowns, he will be in a position of maximum leverage next offseason. He could either get a huge long-term deal from Dallas, or he could force the Cowboys into a second tag at an even higher number, or he could hit the open market and let teams bid on him. In other words, signing the tag now is a bet on himself and a bet on this offense. For the Cowboys front office, using the franchise tag and getting it signed buys them time and flexibility. We know the Cowboys are juggling multiple big money conversations: Dak Prescott's contract, CeeDee Lamb's eventual extension, Micah Parsons looming as a future mega deal, and now George Pickens entering that top-tier wide receiver financial conversation. Tagging Pickens lets them say, "We want you here, we're paying you like a top guy this year, but we're not committing long-term just yet." That keeps the door open to prioritize other extensions first and to see another full year of Pickens in their system before deciding on a massive multi-year commitment. It also protects them from losing him for nothing in free agency. It's basically classic Cowboys front office maneuvering. Keep their stars, but maintain as much leverage as possible. Let's talk about fit and chemistry, because talent on paper doesn't always translate to success on the field. George Pickens is known for his competitive fire. He wants the ball. He wants to be involved, and he's not shy about showing frustration when he feels underused. That has been a storyline at times. Dallas is not a small market, low-pressure environment. It's the exact opposite. The lights are bright, the media coverage is nonstop, and every sideline reaction gets magnified. The good news is that in this offense, he should get plenty of opportunities. With defenses keying on CeeDee, there will be games where Pickens is the featured outside weapon. There will be weeks where he's matched up one-on-one with a CB2 or a younger corner, and the Cowboys will absolutely scheme to attack that. If Dak and Pickens get on the same page with those back shoulder throws and deep shots, we might see some of the best ball of Pickens' career. Another big angle here is the red zone. Dallas has moved the ball between the 20s for years, but there have been stretches where red zone efficiency has been inconsistent. This is where a big-bodied physical receiver like George Pickens pays off. Inside the 20, the field condenses. You don't have as much vertical space. Separation becomes harder. That's when you need guys who can win even when they're not open. Fade routes, slants with strong hands, box-out catches. Pickens excels at that. Dak now has a true red zone mismatch on the outside in addition to CeeDee's versatility and whatever the tight ends bring. That combination alone could turn some of those field goals into touchdowns, which is often the difference between a divisional round exit and a deep playoff run. Now, it's important to recognize that the franchise tag doesn't completely remove risk. From the team's side, they're paying a big guaranteed number for 1 year with no long-term control beyond that. If Pickens has an enormous season, his price tag for a multi-year extension only goes up. If he gets injured, they've paid a premium for a year where he might not be fully available. From Pickens' side, because this is a 1-year deal, he's always one injury away from potentially impacting his next contract. That's the inherent tension of the tag. But the fact that he's signed it suggests he's comfortable with that risk and confident he can stay healthy and productive in this offense. Let's look at the ripple effects on the rest of the Cowboys' receiver room. With CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Brandon Cooks, you have a three-headed monster at wide receiver. Cooks brings veteran savvy and speed, Pickens brings size and physicality, CeeDee brings all-around elite ability. That pushes younger receivers further down the depth chart, which can be both good and bad. On one hand, it gives the young guys time to develop without having to be the guy right away. On the other, it means roster spots and snaps will be more competitive. You might see the Cowboys shop a depth receiver in trade talks, or you may see a younger player really have to show out on special teams and in camp just to earn a role. But from a pure game day standpoint, Dallas can now run legitimately dangerous three-wide sets on almost every down, forcing defenses into nickel looks and then attacking those lighter boxes in the run game. You also have to consider how this changes the way defenses game plan for the Cowboys. In the past, teams could roll coverage towards CeeDee Lamb and dare other guys to consistently beat them one-on-one. That is not a safe strategy anymore, with George Pickens on the field. If you single him up on the outside and devote extra attention to Lamb, the Cowboys can just isolate Pickens and attack that mismatch over and over. If you try to bracket Pickens and play a lot of too-high looks to limit deep shots, then Dallas can feed CeeDee underneath, involve the tight end on seams, and use the run game to punish lighter boxes. This is about making defenses pick their poison instead of letting them dictate terms. Financially, this move is another reminder that the Cowboys are aggressively trying to maximize this window. Dak is in his prime. Micah Parsons is in his prime. CeeDee Lamb is in his prime. You don't make a move like tagging and keeping George Pickens if you're thinking about a rebuild or a transition year. You do it because you believe you can contend right now, this season, in a loaded NFC. Jerry Jones knows the narrative. He knows the criticism about playoff exits, about all hat, no cattle, about not having made a Super Bowl in decades. Moves like this are about putting as much firepower on the field as possible and saying, no more excuses. This is a roster that should expect to compete deep into January. Now, could this franchise tag turn into a long-term extension before the season kicks off? It's possible, and that's another angle we have to talk about. Just because Pickens has signed the tag doesn't mean both sides can't still negotiate. In many situations, teams and players will allow the tag to be a temporary placeholder while they work toward a multi-year deal before the deadline for extensions. If the Cowboys come to the table with the right structure, big guarantees, strong average per year, and a deal that recognizes Pickens' upside, they could lock him up for the foreseeable future and remove any questions about his future. On the other hand, if the team wants to maintain flexibility, they might treat this as a true one-year tryout at top money and revisit the conversation next offseason based on his performance, health, and how the rest of the roster comes together financially. Beyond contracts and cap numbers, there's the culture and identity aspect. Wide receiver rooms have personalities. When you bring in, or commit to, a player like George Pickens, you're bringing in a certain edge and attitude. If that energy is channeled the right way, it can be incredibly positive. Competitive fire, refusing to be outworked, dragging teammates into extra reps, demanding the ball in big moments. All of that can lift an offense. But it also puts some responsibility on the coaching staff and the leadership in the locker room. Dak Prescott, as the face of the franchise and the quarterback, will be central in setting expectations. You want Pickens playing with emotion and intensity, but you also want him aligned with the team's goals, staying locked into the game plan even on days when the ball doesn't come his way as much. The great offenses are the ones where stars buy into the bigger picture while still getting their opportunities. So to recap the core of this breaking story, George Pickens has officially signed his franchise tag with the Dallas Cowboys, locking him in for this season on a lucrative one-year deal. This immediately secures his presence in the offense, avoids a holdout scenario, and gives Dak Prescott another legitimate star weapon on the outside. The Cowboys' offense now features a true dynamic duo at wide receiver with Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, plus Brandon Cooks as a dangerous third option. Defenses are going to have to pick their poison, and that's exactly the position you want to be in if you're trying to compete for a championship. As we move toward training camp, the focus will shift to how quickly Dak and Pickens can build timing, how the coaching staff plans to deploy these weapons, and whether talks of a long-term extension will pick up or go quiet until after the season. But for now, the immediate takeaway is simple. George Pickens is officially in, the tag is signed, and the Dallas Cowboys passing attack just became one of the most fascinating units in the entire NFL. This is going to be a storyline to watch all year long, from week 1 through, potentially, a deep playoff run. If you're a Cowboys fan, let me know what you think about this move. Are you happy that the team used the franchise tag to keep George Pickens in the building? Or would you rather they had gone straight for a long-term extension? Do you think he and CeeDee Lamb can be the best wide receiver duo in the league this year? And how do you see this affecting Dak Prescott's season? Are we talking dark horse MVP run with this kind of firepower? Drop your thoughts, your predictions, and even your concerns down in the comments, because this signing is going to be debated all offseason. And if you want more in-depth Cowboys coverage, breakdowns, and updates on every twist and turn with this roster, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss the next update. The George Pickens era in Dallas is officially on for 2024, and we're going to be here breaking down every step of the journey.